the IOC on various matters, and I'll come and I'll introduce them in a second. Many of them you will know already. Just to tell you the usual, that where the President is, he's at Snowboard Big Air, Women's Snowboard Big Air at Shugan this morning. Speed skating women's team pursuit final this afternoon, and then this evening he's shooting up to Yanqing for the bobsleigh. One digital figure today, viewing figure, Olympic social media accounts have now generated 2.5 billion engagements during Beijing 2022 so far, so good figure there. We have what was scheduled for today, which is a presentation about NOC relations, Olympic solidarity particularly. So I'm very pleased to have with me James McLeod, who's the Director of Olympic Solidarity and NOC Relations, and Olivier Nyamke, Associate Director of Olympic Solidarity. So we'll come to those in a second. And then thought it would be useful to have with us to give you a little bit more clarity on the legal and medical issues, particularly around the current story. I have with me Denny Oswald, who many of you will know, Executive Board Member of the IOC. He's on the Legal Affairs Commission and led the Oswald Commission, which investigated doping, ruled on doping, following violations following the Sochi Winter Games in 2014. I thought that might be useful for you. And then also to give you an idea about anti-doping in the lead up to and during the Games, doping control, have Director Richard Budgett, who's Director of Medical and Scientific for the IOC. So let me just now hand over to Madame Yan. She can introduce her guest and give a few words too. Madame Yan.
Thank you, Mark. 大家上午好。在北京冬奥组委方面，欢迎我们的这个疫情防控办公室副主任黄春先生，继续和我们在一起。今天发布会的主题是这个奥林匹克团结基金。那么，我想它意味着团结、互助、共发展、共进步这几个重要的这个关键词。我也想借这个机会跟大家分享这个团结、友爱、互助的故事。那么，美国女子单板选手特莎莫德在开幕式上，她遇到了这个中国志愿者，非常热情地打招呼，朝她招手，她很感动。那么也在社交媒体上分享了她这个感动的心情，还有呢，她此后在北京冬奥会上，整个的点点滴滴和她的真情实感。那么她这些分享感动了无数的中国的网友，所以呢，这个中国的网友都纷纷的留言欢迎她再回到中国来做客。那么她也成为了中国网友最喜欢的外国运动员之一。除此之外呢，我们在冬奥会上也看到了很多的这个志愿者热心的帮助各国运动员，并且结下了深厚的友谊的故事。还有呢，我们的运动员在赛场上激烈的竞争，那么赛后呢，相互的拥抱、相互的鼓励相互的这个祝福，这些动人的场景。那么一个一个温暖的拥抱，一张张灿烂的笑脸，一句句鼓励的话语和一段段真诚的祝福，我想北京冬奥会不仅为精彩绝伦的体育竞技提供了舞台，也为这个加强交流、促进世界相知相融搭建了桥梁。我们每个人都可以是团结的使者，也都可以成为奥林匹克精神的传播者。好，下面我继续通报有关情况。首先是赛事情况。昨天7个竞赛场馆分别进行了11个小项的比赛，共产生4枚金牌。今天12个竞赛场馆将进行15个小项比赛，预计产生9枚金牌。防疫情况方面，2月14日0点至23点59分，机场入境涉奥人员总数累计23人，其中运动员及随队官员5人，其他利益相关方18人，经海关检测后复检阳性0人。2月14日0点至23点59分，闭环内核酸检测总次数69795，其中运动员及随队官员 6019，其他利益相关方63776，复检阳性1人，来自其他利益相关方。那么，北京冬奥会入境的相关人员和入境的收奥人员和相关的工作人员都实行闭环管理，与社会面是完全的隔开的。最后呢是天气情况，预计今天赛区以多云到晴天气为主，气温较低。延庆的赛区山顶和张家口赛区白天最高气温零下19度到零下15度，夜间最低气温零下23度左右。那么提醒各位媒体记者朋友，外出采访的时候要注意保暖防寒。通报完毕，谢谢。
Thank you very much indeed, and of course we have always Dr. Huang to answer any COVID questions should we need it. But let's go now to our presentation. So I'm going to hand over to James McLeod from Olympic Solidarity and NOC Relations. James.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning to all of you. It's a real pleasure to be here again, being able to present to you, as we did in Tokyo, Olympic Solidarity and NOC Relations, just to give you some of the information of our programs that are here. As you know, 91 national Olympic committees are taking place in these Olympic Winter Games Beijing 2022, with 2 new NOCs from Saudi Arabia and from Haiti, with athletes participating from those 2 nations for the first time. As you know, the IOC, through Olympic Solidarity and the NOC Relations Department, supports the NOCs and the athletes prior to the Games and during Games time through a number of programs. In Olympic Solidarity in particular, we have a budget for this current quadrennial of 2021 to 2024 of $590 million, which goes towards sport development programs, whether it be for athletes, coaches, NOC administrators, etc. In particular, for these games in Beijing, we've invested $17.5 million in athlete preparation through the scholarship program that you all know very well, that I explained as well to you in Tokyo. On top of that, we have a program of support to the NOCs to get their athletes here in the best possible way, and we adapted those programs specifically based on the additional costs that the teams were facing due to the COVID countermeasures due to the global pandemic, and we invested an additional $5 million into the Olympic Games subsidies that are provided by Olympic Solidarity. Now, obviously one of the biggest programs and the most visible one is the Olympic scholarships for athletes, and that is a program that has been going for many, many years. If you go back even to Salt Lake City, a certain Janica Kostelic, who won many medals then, was a scholarship holder, and we've had many success stories since. The New Zealand athlete Zoe, who's just now won another silver medal, is also a scholarship holder from Olympic Solidarity. So with that, I'll pass to Olivier Nyamke, who's running that program, and he'll give you a few of the figures relating to the scholarships themselves. Olivier, please.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everybody. As James mentioned, we have a certain number of programs in Olympic Solidarities aiming to support NOCs in the development of sports. For athletes and their entourage, we have a total budget of 160 million invested in various programs, 12 programs in total, supporting their training, their identification, the education of the coach, but also their post-career and all the life around the athletes. When it comes to Beijing and the participation, James mentioned the figure invested in the scholarship program, $17,500,000 US, spread out 80 NOCs to support 429 athletes. So each NOC has their own strategy to support their athletes. Some of them would provide simply a financial assistance, so use a scholarship and pay cash. Others will organize their training using this funding, paying for the coach, paying for the travel, paying for their participation in competition. Out of those 429, 236 managed to qualify, We are monitoring their results. So far, we have already won 7 medals. It was 6 yesterday. We just learned that Zoe from New Zealand just made a silver. So the medals are what we call the bonus. What we really target is the qualification of these athletes, making sure that they arrive in Beijing at the Games with a good preparation, without having to stress about their financial conditions. So some of the interesting results we have is we have athletes that are in the podium. So we have 7 now medals won. So Zoe Zadowski-Synot from New Zealand, as you all know, won 2. We have from Australia, Jakara Anthony in freestyle skiing, Kimberly Boss from the Netherlands in skeleton, Anne Desmet from Belgium, short track. Also, Krister Aparjos from Latvia in the team relay, and Tess Coadi from Australia. They all benefited from this program in a different way, all made it all the way to the podium, so this is a big satisfaction. But we also have another priority, which is to make sure that the small winter nations who participate in the first time in the Olympic Games have a good preparation. As James mentioned, we have 2 new NOC at the Olympic Games, and one of them, Richardson Viano from IT, has been a scholarship holder, and he's currently the first ever Haitian athletes to participate in the Winter Games. So this is in a nutshell what the program of support for athletes is. And happy to answer any question if you want to understand a bit more about the process of how we run those programs. James, back to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Olivier. Okay, well, I'm happy to take questions on that subject and obviously on all subjects. So let's start with Xinhua over there, and then we'll come over here. Yeah, I think it's Reuters down there.
Thanks, Mark. I will ask in Chinese. 严女士，我想问您一个问题，就是我们奥林匹克加入了一个新格言，就是更团结。然后我们北京冬奥会的口号呢，也是一起向未来。您觉得在当今这个世界还有许多纷争，那我们能不能一起向未来呢？谢谢。
好，谢谢你这个问题。那我想，这个奥林匹克运动它在诞生之初就刻入了团结与这个友谊的这个基因。奥林匹克运动可以说是这个为团结而来，也因为团结而兴。那么正是因为奥运的这种和平与团结的理念，它与中国的这个和平发展、合作共赢的这个理念是高度一致的。所以呢，我想中国才会在2008年成功举办这个北京奥运之后，又在2014年举办了南京的这个青奥会，继而呢，在2022年举办北京的这个冬奥会。我们本届北京2022冬奥会的口号呢是一起向未来。我想它是这个奥林匹克更快、更高、更强、更团结，特别是新加入的这个更团结这个格言的一个中国诠释，就是 Chinese interpretation。那么一起向未来，其实呢也是一个都不能少，也就是说要让每一个热爱体育、热爱运动的这个人都能够实现他们的梦想。当前呢，这个新冠疫情在全球仍然是在这个持续。我想，这个北京冬奥会它实际上是一个难得的全球性的一个盛事，一个喜事。我们是希望有更多的人参与冰雪运动，让奥运呢惠及更多的欠发达地区，并且呢以冰雪运动为纽带，凝聚更团结的这个力量。为这个饱受疫情困苦的这个全世界的人们，注入更多的这种激情与快乐，信心和力量，让这个我和你一起向未来。谢谢。
Thank you very much. Let's go to Reuters, please, and then we'll go to Wakako.
Good morning. Ian Axon, Reuters Television. We spoke to Witold Banka last night, president of WADA. who said that anyone caught doping a minor should be banned for life, and that there was a particular problem with Russian entourages. Are they positions that the IOC would agree with? And given the scale of the story today, should President Bach be here to answer questions? Thank you.
On the first one, I think it's probably best, as I said, Denny Oswald has a great deal of experience in this, both going back a long way, but also being in charge of the Oswald Commission. Denny, do you want to take that question? Oh, you have to press the, yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Well, first of all, I have to mention that the decision was made by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is an independent body where the IOC is a signatory, and therefore the court has been also recognized by the Swiss Federal Court, and therefore the decision made by this court are compulsory for every signatories, including the IOC, and therefore we have to respect the decision. We have not received the reasoned decision, so we don't know exactly all the arguments that have been considered by the court. According to the press release which have been published by the Court of Arbitration, apparently the main element was the fact that if the athlete would be suspended, she would not be able to participate in the games, and the damage for her would be irreparable. Whereas if she competes, even if she gets the gold in the individual competition, the medal could always be withdrawn. So therefore, that was apparently the reasoning. And again, we have to respect this decision.
People should be banned for life if they're caught doping a minor. And is there a particular problem with Russian entourages?
I will hand over to Denny in a minute, but I don't think we have asked for lifetime bans. In fact, even the president of the IOC wanted lifetime bans for dopers. It's not, unfortunately, the law doesn't allow that, but I will hand over to Denny.
Yes, not only the law does not allow that. In addition, we are in the phase of provisional measures. The question is whether she could continue. The case is still pending. The case has not been we don't have a final decision on the merits. The B sample have even not yet been examined by the laboratory, and therefore a ban, which would be not certainly be life ban, would only be decided when we have a final decision on the case itself, whether it is doping or not. And yes, of course, it's clearly a wish and a decision of the IOC, but also mainly on WADA to examine all aspects of this case, and including the situation of the entourage of the girl, because of course you can imagine a girl of 15 would not do something wrong alone. So yes, the entourage will be investigated.
And President Bach will be here, I think, day after tomorrow, so you can put all your questions to him then. Yeah, Wakako, over to you. Yomiuri Shimbun.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, I'm Denny Wakakoyuki from the Yomiuri Shimbun. Good to have you here. Allow me two questions. The IOC EV yesterday announced that there would be no medal ceremony planned for women's competition if the particular girl came to take medal. What is the purpose of this announcement, and what sort of message would you like to send to the other competitors who somewhat hover or lost confidence to the level playing field? And also one technical question. What I said yesterday in the statement that there shouldn't be, indicating there shouldn't be any leniency to the provisional suspension to the protected persons. And that's one of the reasons that you all three bodies protested to CAS. What is your assessment there in terms of regulation? Of course, put aside CAS statement and CAS decision. What should be, in your view, the due course?
Well, first part of your question, we fully understand the situation of the team classified second and third, but you must understand that it would be very difficult to allocate medals based on a situation which is not final, because there is a fair chance that you would not give the right medal to the right team. And it's why we decided it's wiser, until we don't have clarity on the case, not to attribute medal. Again, we had to balance between the situation of the athletes, which has been authorized to continue to compete, and the interest of the other team who deserve a dignified ceremony. The decision was difficult to make because we fully understand that it's difficult for the athlete not to have their ceremony, but there will be ways to restore the situation at a later stage. The damage for them is not irreparable, even if we fully understand that it's not exactly the same if you get your medal at the games or later on. But the IOC decided to make every effort to have a very special ceremony for these teams when we know what kind of medal they will get. And regarding the court has to apply the law as it is, and the law in that case is the rules or are the rules and the regulation of the World Anti-Doping Code, and there are provisions regarding the protected person. Whether we like it or not, it's not an issue at the moment, but it's what had to be applied because it's in the rules. A rule can always be reconsidered after a case based on the experience which has been made, and this is not our remit. It's a decision that the World Anti-Doping Agency will have to consider probably in the future. But for the time being, we had just to apply the law as it is.
The women's competitions medal ceremony, that would be implied in your answer. Also, what is the message that IOC would like to tell to the athletes?
The message is that we want to allocate the medal to the right person. And as long as the decision regarding the doping case of this athlete has not been clarified, she has delivered a positive sample, and until we have a clear situation, then we will not allocate the medal, because it would be a way to prejudge whether it's a serious case confirmed by a B sample and by all the proceedings which has to follow or not. And it's why we felt it's fair for everybody. It's fair for everybody, every athlete involved, that no medal will be attributed in that competition at these games.
Thank you. I should just say, by the way, that we are talking to the NOCs involved, because obviously it's very important to keep in mind always the desires of the athletes involved too. So let's speak to the lady here, and then I think Reuters wanted a question. So yeah.
我是中央广播电视总台的记者，我有2个问题，一个是提给 Olivia， 一个是提给 James。Olivia， 我关心的是，就是运动员基金、运动员奖学金的遴选标准是什么？未来在这个运动员基金的，就是奖学金的这个发放和选择上，是否有更多的创新？然后我提给 James 的问题是，因为我们注意到，在历届冬奥会的参赛的国家和地区中间，来自热带和非洲的国家相对比较少。 那我们现在讲究要更团结的一个世界，我们现在已经有91个国家和地区，未来团结基金如何发挥更积极的这样的作用，能够让冰雪资源比较匮乏的地区也能够加入到冬奥的这个赛场上来？谢谢。
Yep, go ahead, Olivier.
Thank you for your question. So the selection criteria is very simple. You need as an athlete to be hopeful for the Olympic Games, for the specific program. So as we say, we have various programs. We have different selection criteria. We go from grassroots to elite. For this particular program, any athlete with a realistic chance to qualify for the next Olympic Games is eligible for the program. And to check that level, we work with each international federation, meaning that each candidature is screened internally at Olympic Solidarity, but also with the international federation to make sure that the athlete is known and can be realistically qualified for the Games. Thank you.
Okay, I think Carlos Groman there from Reuters, yeah, gentleman here, and then we'll move back.
Thank you, Mark.
Oh, I do apologise.
Sorry, there was just a bit more just relating to the participation of the NOCs here. As Olivier just said, the Olympic Solidarity programs really cover grassroots development, talent identification, a whole load of different elements. It's not just the elite level athletes that come through the scholarship program that we focus on. So Olympic Solidarity really is the sport development department of the International Olympic Committee. To do that work, we need to work with the international federations and national Olympic committees to develop sport in all its facets, not just winter sports, summer sports, to make sure that NOCs, athletes, coaches have a pathway to development, and that is the basis of what Solidarity does.
Thank you, James. I'm sorry to have ignored you. Right, let's go to Reuters. And
Carlos Groman from Reuters. A question for BOCOG. How the Valieva drama has affected the Games for you as organizers? And a question for Mark, going back a little bit further than yesterday's doping case. There was a similar case in 1972 involving an American swimmer who had done all this proper paperwork, who did not test positive for a banned substance without anyone knowing it, but there was a blunder by his teammates. He has not been receiving the same sort of protected person protection that Valieva has gotten. Are you considering reviewing that case, or even just taking him off the doping offenders list of athletes in the Olympics? Thank you.
Thank you. 那么北京冬奥组委在这个兴奋剂问题上，我们主要的职责是这个就是保障这个兴奋剂的检测中心的这个很好的运转。那么据我所知呢，我们现在这个3个赛区20个兴奋剂的检查站目前都运转状态很良好。同时呢，我们还有职责从这个食品安全的这个角度来着手，确保食源性的兴奋剂事件零发生。从中国的角度来说，我们是一贯提倡健康文明的体育运动，也始终坚持这个严令禁止、严格检查和严肃处理的反兴奋剂方针。对兴奋剂是一个零容忍的态度。谢谢。
Thanks. On your other question, I probably will pass to Denis, but I mean, obviously every case is different. I'm not really aware of this case, and I imagine there may even be a statute of limitation now on that. But Denis, 1972?
Well, first of all, it's a general principle of law that the law which applies to a case is the law valid at the moment of the infringement was made. And therefore, I'm pretty certain that the law and regarding doping in 72 was not the same as what it is now. First of all, the World Anti-Doping Code did not exist. There were totally different regulations. So it's very difficult to go back and to review a case based on a new law which did not exist at the time.
Thank you. Gentleman here, we'll take lady there, and then Christine Brennan, and then we'll come over to this side. But, yeah.
Jörg Mebus, ARD Television in Germany. A question for Mr. Oswald. Mr. Oswald, do you see a connection between the Valieva case and the chaos it harms here in Beijing and the possibly negligent handling of the Russia state doping scandal in Sochi 2014?
It's very difficult to answer your question as we don't have the details about the current case. My impression from what I've seen and heard is that there is no connection with the institutionalized doping we had in Sochi. It seems to be a totally different case, but again, difficult to have an opinion without having all details.
Yeah, in white. In white, thank you.
Tracy Holmes, ABC Australia. My question's for Mr. Oswald. People keep talking about this young athlete as being a protected person, arguably with her image and her name going around the world in negative headlines everywhere. She's become the face of doping. So what does protected person actually mean and what does it deliver? And secondly, is there an issue that it should never have got to this point anyway, and she is now carrying the burden for a failure in the system? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. The protected person, according to the World Anti-Doping Code, is described as a minor. And minor, I think in sport, is considered until 16 or under 16, which is the case of this athlete. And again, this is part of the rules, and she benefited of this rule, apparently in the CAS decision. Second part of your question was. Yes, maybe what I have to add regarding this case, we should not forget that the only case, or second case, but we had at these games. If you look in the past, the number of cases we had at Olympic Games, it was much higher. Out of 3,000 athletes nearly, it's this single case which draw or take the light on it, but it's not. We must not exaggerate the importance of this single case. The benefit she got is again described by the World Anti-Doping Code, and we just had, or the Court of Arbitration had to apply the law. As I said before, it could be reviewed in the future if we feel that it is not correct that some athletes competing with adults are protected. And again, protected doesn't mean that she had the right to do anything and everything wrong, but that you take into consideration her personal situation, and that's what the court did in that case.
Thank you very much. Christine Brennan from USA Today, and then we'll come over to this side for a bit.
Thank you, Mark. Also to Denny, to both of you. It doesn't take much to look at social media and see how this story, to Tracy's point, has exploded, and to see athletes from all over the world, all different countries, speaking out, furious, angry, demanding answers, asking for the IOC and others to uphold clean sport. So with that in mind, and of course tonight it's just going to be madness in the mix zone. Every single one of those women will be asked not about their program, but what they think about Kamila Valieva competing, right? That's a fact. We know that's going to happen. So how would you both characterize what Russia has done to these Olympic Games? Thank you.
Denis, do you want to go first? Obviously, this case is not even finished yet. So,
yes, I mean, it's surprising that people from all over the world have opinion and comments on the case where we ourselves don't know the details. And it's very easy to criticize without knowing the situation. We have tried to do our best to apply principle of justice, due process, respect the law, and okay, it's part of our job to be criticized. That's quite normal nowadays. But that's it. We cannot do more than what we have done. We've tried our best. As I said before, we have to weigh the interest of all the parties concerned. We respect also the disappointment of the athletes who are not going to have their ceremony at these games, but we had to balance the two things, and the way we did it was, we felt, the most appropriate way.
I mean, I would just add that obviously we have huge sympathy for all the athletes involved, all of the athletes involved. This is not a situation that we would want, and we would like it to be cleared up as quickly as possible. And we, of course, have sympathy with people around the world. As a general comment, we are all wanting to see the end of doping. I'm afraid wherever people organize themselves, there is always cheating. That can always happen in any walk of life. So I don't think it will ever be done away with, but we have sympathy. Of course, we want to see clean sport, and that's why we've taken the actions that we have over the years to see clean sport prosper.
Right, but as you know, Russia has been given a hall pass every time to come back. I mean, in hindsight, has it been just a huge mistake to not ban Russia completely from these Olympics after the chaos that we have been plunged into because of Russia?
Well, firstly, I would say this case isn't over. It's one case. But Denis, you maybe want to answer the bigger question.
Yeah, we took very harsh measures after 2014, after or a bit later when everything was discovered. If you remember, we heard 39 athletes, if I remember correctly, who were punished, suspended for 2 games. Our decision was partly overturned by the Court of Arbitration, what we had to respect. The IOC also suspended the Russian Olympic Committees for the next games. The only exception the IOC made was to accept not to punish the clean athletes, because even in a country like Russia, there are also clean athletes, and therefore, after very strong screening, a number of athletes were accepted to participate in Pyeongchang. But they were pretty young athletes and so on, because again, the task of the IOC is also not to punish clean athletes, and we try to make the difference. But our decision was to suspend the Russian Olympic Committee. Later on, there was another case which led WADA to suspend RUSADA, to suspend the Olympic Committee. This went to CAS as well, and the current situation where you don't have Russia competing, but the Russian Olympic Committee, is the result of the decision by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, based on the first decision which was made by WADA. So all efforts have been made to ban Russia as far as it was possible according to law. And now there is a process between WADA and the Russian sport, let's say, for their reintegration in the world of sport with normal participation.
Thank you very much. Let's go over here. So we're going to have lady there, and then we'll go to Graham Dunbar. So yeah, lady there, and then gentleman.
你好，中国新闻社的记者王浩，我的问题是想提给马克先生。因为刚刚严女士也是分享了美国的滑雪运动员和不论是奥运村里面的志愿者，还是中国网友一个互动的很温馨的故事。我想问一下马克先生是否看到了这个故事？那对冬奥期间这类的温馨的小故事，您是有什么看法？谢谢。
I didn't see the story. I mean, it's great, and we all like the Olympic spirit. It's something that's very important and something we should cherish. But let's move on now. Graham Dunbar from Associated Press, yeah. And then I think it's AP as well, yeah. John Lester, I think.
Hi, Graham Dunbar from the AP. Denny, you say that all efforts have been done and we've done whatever we could, but you know, the reason why we're here today is because all the decisions that have come out from Lausanne over the years have not changed the culture in Russia, and that the generation of clean athletes you always talk about and you want, do they even have a chance to be clean athletes? Now, your commission in late 2017, you saw the evidence, you believed it was all going on, you verified it, and yet the decision before Pyeongchang was not to do a ban, and that could have been done, and it was no deterrent. And the reason why we're here today is there has not been enough deterrent. Do you really think that all could have been done, especially in the second half of 2017, to avoid getting this stage today? And a quick one for James. What are the long and medium-term prospects for Hong Kong and Taiwanese athletes to continue competing for separate NOCs at the Olympics?
Well, I can only repeat, in 2017, what we did was the maximum we could do according to the law. The sanction, whichever sanction you take, they must be proportionate to the offense. And we took decisions, the maximum possible according to law. We suspended the athletes involved for the next 2 games, and this overturned by the court saying it's not proportionate to the offense. And they reduced even for the athlete where it was the sanction as such was admitted. It was limited to 1 Olympic Games and not 2. But we live in a state of law, and we have to respect the law and the ruling of the relevant courts.
So I accept that your commission did what it could. Did the executive board do all that it could in its December 2017 decision?
Yes, because the executive board excluded the Russian Olympic Committee for the next games, and as I said before, an exception was made for the athlete who could present a situation where they would prove that they were not involved in the system and that they had nothing to do with this state doping which has been discovered. Again, we cannot punish clean athletes, even if they are Russians, and it's what we try to do.
James, quick clarification from you.
Yeah, quick clarification. Thank you, Graham. Yes, there's no discussion at the moment, medium or long term, to change the recognition for Hong Kong, China NOC or the Chinese Taipei NOC.
Gentleman here, and then we'll go to John Lester from AP, I think it is. Yeah.
谢谢马克。我是中央广播电视总台的记者。目前呢，中国的冰雪运动相对于北欧国家来说，还是这个基础还是相对薄弱的。那么，作为奥林匹克这个团结基金，对于发展中国冰雪运动，比如说邀请一些国外的运动员啊、国外的教练来中国来进行指导，对中国的冰雪运动的发展有什么样的一个帮助？请问严家荣女士吧。好，谢谢。
不好意思，你最后才说是向我提问，我以为你是向马克提问，你把问题再重复一遍。
就是目前呢，中国的冰雪运动的基础相对于北欧国家来说还是相对薄弱的。那么作为这个奥林匹克的这个团结基金，那对于发展中国冰雪运动，比如说邀请一些国外的教练啊、运动员啊来华来进行指导，来进行交流，对于中国冰雪运动的这种发展，这个基金有什么样的一种帮助？谢谢。
Thank you. Thank you. I think we clarified. I think that's a question for James
and
Olivier, but James, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, we work with all 206 national Olympic committees, including the Chinese Olympic Committee for sport development programs. We're very excited about the impetus that these games will give winter sports in this country, and Olympic solidarity is at disposal to the Chinese Olympic Committee to help with coaching courses, athlete scholarships, grassroots sports programs, etc., as we do with all the other 205 NOCs in addition to China.
我想补充2句，就是说你刚才说中国的这个冰雪运动基础比较薄弱，那么我想这个随着我们这次举办冬奥会整个的筹办，我们的举办，我们也已经带动了3.46亿这个中国民众来参与冰雪运动，将来在这个领域呢，我们因为在整个筹办啊，还有这个举办过程中，我们也留下了很丰富的遗产，不管是场馆。还是这个就是滑雪教练，还是我们这个青少年，这个因为我们的3亿人上冰雪的运动是进校园、进社区所以呢，就是所以我们也有很多的这个滑雪教练呀，这些专业人才，包括这些你说的这些培训员，还有我们的进校园以后的这些青少年，他们是这个将来的这个主要的生力军。所以我想在这些方面，我们的基础应该已经有了一个非常大的这个提升。所以这就是为什么我经常说，这个中国人对冰雪运动的这个热情一旦点燃，那么这个冷冰雪已经就成为了一个热时尚。谢谢。
Okay, let's go to AP and then lady there in white. Yeah.
Hi, John Lester from the Associated Press, and I apologize to colleagues who would like to keep hauling you over the coals about the hall pass for Russia, which I think was very well said. But I would like to talk about Africa. You know, those lovely 5 rings behind you represent, I think, the 5 continents, right? And but if you were to look at that as a proportion of, 6 athletes from African countries as a proportion of 1.3 billion people, that ring would be a thimble. It would be practically invisible. And I wanted to ask you a question that was actually sent to me by a Nigerian slider who's not here this time because she didn't make it. And she asks, is this the direction that the IOC wants to be going? What is this saying? What message is this sending? I mean, obviously, Pyeongchang was hailed as a high watermark for African participation, and it's gone backwards since then. And I had some specific questions, too, about the solidarity payments. Intrigued by the language of the solidarity literature that you have on your website, where it talks about not wanting to artificially grow winter sports in places that don't have winter sports tradition. Maybe I'm wrong here, but that smacks to me of prejudice against countries that are perhaps geographically not inclined to have cold weather. So I want to know why is that language put into specifically for winter sports? And finally, I wanted to ask about continental representation. Because the idea of participation, the idea, this nice ideal basically that those rings, everybody should participate, is hard-baked into the Summer Olympics. But it's not in the Winter Games. Now, I know you're going to say, well, that's because, we accept federations. Federations have their own rules and blah-de-blah and all the rest of it. But, I mean, we see continents represented at a far greater scale at the Summer Games. Why can't that be hard-baked into the Winter Games too?
James, do you want to take that series of questions?
Thank you very much, John. I think you're touching at the heart of what the Olympic Games are and also what Olympic solidarity does and the way the global sports network works. The Olympic Games have got to find a good balance between attracting the best athletes in the world and universal participation where that is possible. Now, obviously, there is a difference between Summer Games and a Winter Games in terms of access to sport across the world. And access to winter sport is a different ball game than to summer sports. We know that there is unequal access, but one of the things that Olympic Solidarity does is provide pathways for that access to happen. So an athlete from Africa, or indeed Oceania, I mean, you're focusing on Africa, but we could look at all the 5 continents, will need to be able to access the sport, whether it's getting training, getting coaching, getting equipment, and that is something that Olympic Solidarity can provide. It's not an automatic, it's not something that we do in all NOCs, but if the NOC and the athletes come through that pathway, we're there to support it. Now, obviously, the international federations set the qualification rules for access to the games, whether it's the summer games or winter games, and we need to work very closely with them to find that balance between attracting the best level athletes, but also to attract representation from a diverse number of NOCs. And after each games, there is a review of those systems, as there was after Pyeongchang. There will be another one after these games in Beijing, where we'll be looking forward to Milan Cortina, working with the athletes' commissions, the international federations, the NOCs, to debrief on what is the best balance to be achieved. And that's something that the IOC will do systematically throughout. That's a general overview of where we are.
Let's just get away from the alphabet soup, though, for a sec. 6 African athletes for a continent of 1.3 billion people, plus I don't know how many millions, hundreds of millions of people from the African diaspora living around the world. Is that acceptable for the IOC?
I do believe that's something that the IOC needs to comment on. I mean, for us, it's there are 5 continents represented here in the Beijing Games.
Thank you very much. Yeah, lady there.
Question really quickly.
Yeah, okay.
You know, when it comes to Russia's behavior, when will enough be enough? We've spoken to so many athletes about what comes next. Will this finally change Russia's status? How can you guarantee fair games in Paris and Milan after this?
Well, I mean, I'll turn to, I think we've answered that already several times here, but I mean, I think Denny has made the point that this case that we're talking about is not even concluded yet. So it's one case not even concluded. But Denny, do you want to take up the answer again? Or?
No, again, the situation is reviewed by the World Anti-Doping Agency, because the current sanction against Russia have been decided by WADA, and they are monitoring what's happening in Russia, and it's their decision which is applied at the moment, and that may be reviewed, may be extended. It's in their hands, not in the hands of the IOC. You only follow what decision WADA has taken in that case.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, lady there in white. Yeah, and then Christoph Becker. Yeah, sorry, we're trying to get around as many people as possible.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
我是人民日报的记者。我的问题呢，想提给严女士。就在北京冬奥会开幕前夕呢，中国迎来了农历的虎年春节。纯洁的冰雪呢，与热烈的中国红，在奥运会期间可以说是完美邂逅，为来自世界的运动员带来了不一样的体验。那么今天呢，是中国的传统节日元宵节，能否请您介绍一下在闭环内关于元宵节有怎样的特殊安排？谢谢。
你提醒了我们所有人哈，今天确实是这个元宵节。它这个元宵节在中国呢，其实也是这个团圆节，是家人团圆、朋友这个团结，都是这个元宵节的这个应有之义。那么在元宵节的时候，在中国呢是亲朋好友这个齐聚一堂，赏花灯、吃元宵，这个猜灯谜，放烟花。来祈愿这个来年这个吉祥如意。很多地方是把这个元宵节称为这个灯节，会举行这种像花灯展这样的活动。那么刚才你也提到这个红色和冰雪这样的一个融合，这就让我想起了，就是说这个实际上这个北京冬残奥会的吉祥物雪融融，它就是以中国的这个大红灯笼为原型来这个创作和设计的，所以呢，这就是为什么很多的网友说，北京下了大雪，那么雪后满城尽是雪融融。那我想呢，北京冬奥会呢，恰逢这个元宵佳节， 咱们奥林匹克大家庭的成员都相聚在北京，共享盛会。我想这也正是元宵节团团圆圆的一个美好的寓意，也是奥林匹克更团结的精神所在吧。那么你刚才提到场馆会有一些什么样的安排，我还真是这个了解了一下。那么为了让大家亲身体验这个元宵文化，据我了解啊，咱们所在的这个主媒体中心，它的这个餐厅将组织一个规模不是很大的猜灯谜的活动。那么大家呢，在餐厅也可以品尝到这个元宵节的特色食品，叫汤圆儿，就是 that kind of very soft and sticky that kind of food， 是软软糯糯的这个元宵。那么延庆的运行团队，场馆运行团队将向记者的工作间赠送这个延庆特色非遗的手工制作的小老虎这样的挂件。五棵松的体育中心将开展中外青年的这个交流活动，中国青年的志愿者将向国际的志愿者赠送元宵节的礼物。我也了解到，昨天在我们的一个会议上，我也了解到这个颁奖广场举办的文艺演出，届时呢也会有元宵特色的元素的展示，欢迎大家届时前往去体验。谢谢。
Thank you very much. I think Christoph Becker's been waiting a long time. And then I'm going to come right over here to ABC, and I think it's Jacqueline Magne as well, I can see in the distance there. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning. Christoph Becker from Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Coming back from the lantern riddle to the doping riddle. My question regards the EB's decision to not have ceremonies. Maybe, Monsieur Oswald, you could elaborate a little bit on how the situation in figure skating at the moment differs from, for example, the situation prior to the Rio 2016 Games, where I just looked it up. Russia won 56 medals, so there must have been 56 medal ceremonies with people where the world didn't know whether they would actually be profiting from the state-run system or not. Everything was found out later. So why did all these ceremonies take place, and now clean athletes are being robbed of the chance to have their ceremony moment here? Second question. Mark, you said it's hard to get rid of doping, certainly, and I'm not an expert on the Russian penal code, but would the IOC be willing to push charges if it turns out that Kamila Valieva has been drugged with trimethazidine by a person without any medical indication? And then thirdly, please, Monsieur Oswald, you mentioned this new generation of Russian athletes who started in Pyeongchang. Two of those athletes who actually won medals in figure skating have retired due to the physical effects of their sport. So they are part of the old generation. Now, would the IOC like to see changes to the figure skating rules, namely the age of the participants who compete at the Olympic Games, because obviously it has very serious effects on their health when they start at a very young age, such as Ms. Valieva's. Thank you.
First of all, the situation in Rio, as you probably remember, the IOC decided in principle that no Russian athletes would be allowed to participate in Rio until clarity is made by each international federation regarding the participants which have been entered by the Russian Olympic Committee. And all federations did. I was involved in a federation at the time. We screened all athletes entered. We made sure that none of them had positive cases. We ensure in the different sports that these athletes had made a number of negative tests during the year when they participate in Rio. more we couldn't do, and it was enough element to consider that these athletes were not involved in this doping system which has been discovered. And therefore, they had the right to participate, and they had the right to have a ceremony. So the case cannot be compared with the one we have at stake now, where we don't know, because it's not the final decision, whether the athlete was doped or not. All checks were made in Rio. Regarding the age limit, this is a decision made by the different federations. There are age limits, for example, in gymnastics. I don't know the situation in figure skating. I imagine that there is no, but maybe Dr. Burchett can answer better to this question.
Yes, thank you. You touch on this hugely important subject of safeguarding, and we have a safeguarding unit at the International Olympic Committee and a safeguarding framework. Obviously, the Olympic Games are a priority with safeguarding officers here, the innovation of welfare officers with the NOCs, and clearly the prevention of harassment and abuse in sport is hugely important. And minors are maybe particularly vulnerable, but everyone's vulnerable. Every sport, every continent, every country, every international federation, every national federation, there is evidence of harassment and abuse, as there is across society. So we have a responsibility to make sure the programs are in place to protect all those individuals. And certainly you can look at doping in many cases as a form of abuse. So the prevention and the safeguarding programs are particularly important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, as I said, I'm going to go across here, ABC, and then Jacqueline Magnay.
Alex Prochet from ABC News. Thank you for taking my question. Earlier, it was mentioned the IOC has advocated for lifetime bans for individuals and entourages involved in doping of a minor, but the law doesn't allow for that. Do you think there's a flaw with the law, and will you renew calls to change it?
Well, difficult to really assess the tendency in the different countries, but you have death penalty in some countries which have been abolished, for example. There are new elements taken into consideration nowadays, and a live ban are only envisaged by the law in very, very specific cases, and the violation of sports rules so far have never been considered as strong enough to justify live ban. That's what the law foreseen, and again, we are bound by the existing law.
And Mr. Oswald, lastly, you mentioned that you couldn't ban Russia outright because you can't punish clean athletes, but there would be some that would point to those involved in Valieva's events that will not be able to have a medal ceremony are being punished, and those are clean athletes.
Fully agree, and as it was mentioned before, we have a lot of sympathy for these athletes. They are in a situation which is disagreeable, and for us as well, but we have to balance between making this ceremony with all the consequences and to determine, first of all, which medal we will present to these athletes. We cannot prejudge what's going to happen regarding the case, the doping case itself. It's why we felt it's safer to wait until we have clarity on the case before deciding about the medal ceremony.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are running over, but I'm going to carry on if you're okay, everybody. Yeah, gentleman right at the back, and then gentleman just here in the front.
Jacqueline Magnay from the Australian newspaper. One question to BOCOG. There are a lot of journalists up in the mountains who would love to come to the closing ceremony but are unable to because of the logistical issue of getting back. would you please consider putting on a very late train or a very early train in the morning so that those hundreds of journalists up there will be able to enjoy what I'm sure will be a fabulous ceremony? Denny, I'm interested in why the IOC, in the CAS decision, you only initiated a case against Rusada and not against the Russian Olympic Committee nor Kamila Valieva herself. And I was just wondering why you decided just to go for Rusada. And you mentioned earlier about there being, you didn't want irreparable damage, that there was no irreparable damage. But I just read a newspaper this morning that said this is the day the Games died. And I'm wondering that the reputation of the Olympics, you have really lost control of the integrity of the Olympics by outsourcing all these decisions to CAS. And is there a move within the IOC to perhaps wrest back some of that control of the Games decisions back to the IOC rather than outsourcing them?
Well, the case was made against Rusada because the decision we were attacking was made by Rusada. Rusada decided to suspend the athlete, and therefore another disciplinary commission of Rusada then decided to lift the penalty, and it's that decision we were attacking, and therefore it was made by a body of Rusada, and therefore we had to attack Rusada, and not the decision was not made by the Russian Olympic Committee. Therefore, we were not to attack them. Now, whether it was a good decision, the right decision to establish the Court of Arbitration for Sport and to outsource in a way the decision. The tendency has been also in doping cases to outsource as much as possible, because the IOC and the federations were criticized to judge themselves, their own athletes, saying that they have a conflict of interest. And it's why we try to establish outside bodies, independent bodies like the Court of Arbitration, but more recently the ITA. And the ITA is in charge of the doping affairs at the Olympic Games, so that the IOC cannot be criticized for taking decision in our own interest. And that's the tendency you can, in business, in everywhere, the tendency today to have independent bodies in a way controlling the way the business is run. And it's what we have done, which is totally in accordance with current tendency in the world.
Yeah, gentlemen.
Yeah. I didn't answer her question yet. I think she raised the question about transport, right?
You're absolutely right, man. Yeah, again, I'm cutting everyone off here. Sorry, I'm trying to move on the questions, which I shouldn't do. Yes, please go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. 这位记者，首先我想向你确认，你提出的问题是不是说，记者们很想出席闭幕式，但是担心闭幕式结束之后呢，没有这个时间很晚了，没有这个班车送他们回主媒体中心或者回酒店，希望我们增加这个时间比较晚一点的这个班车，是这样吗？好，我想呢，就是说是这个为咱们的这个媒体记者哈，提供这个在交通方面提供这个便利，这个我们是非常重视的。所以你的这个要求，我们一定会向我们的交通部门反映，争取这个予以积极的这个解决。那么交通问题呢，是历届的奥运会一个比较大的难题。我们呢也一直是在倾听各方面的反馈和意见，持续的进行这个优化和改善。咱们这个媒体班车这块，据我所知，就已经进行了很多的这个改进。比如说，我知道原来我们给媒体的班车都是按照这个竞赛的日程，围绕着竞赛日程来安排，重点是保障这个就是比赛的前2个小时和比赛结束后的1个小时。 后来我们发现，咱们这个媒体记者工作真的是非常的辛苦。那么一个比赛结束之后，咱们的记者还会在场馆逗留很长的时间，完成工作之后才能够返回酒店或者是主媒体中心。所以我们就根据这些情况，迅速的做出了调整。增加了这个班车的这个频率，同时呢也把这个保障这个重点这个时段，把这个保障媒体班车重点时段也进行了根据记者工作的特点进行了调整。所以这个大家有什么这个意见要求，我们都会继续的倾听你们的意见。谢谢。
Thank you. We are running over a bit. Yeah, gentleman in black there. Yeah. And then we'll come down here, and then last question over there. That will take us to probably 20 past, which I think we're getting a little bit over. Yes, sir.
Yep, thank you, Mark. I'm with CGTN, and my question is for Madame Yan Jiarong, and let me ask that question in Chinese, please. 那严女士，我的问题是，我们今天虽然是这正月15，但是刚才我们很多记者朋友问了非常多关于兴奋剂的问题。那么作为这个本届这个冬奥会的主办方，对于这个兴奋剂问题，你有什么担心？我们现在还有很多赛程，还有好几天的这个比赛，所以主办方对这个问题有没有什么担忧？主办方采取什么样的措施？另外，中国代表团、中国体育队、运动队会采取什么样的措施来避免这个问题？另外一个，我们对于闭幕式也很感兴趣。到目前为止，我们现在还不知道任何关于闭幕式的一些细节。如果您能透露一点的话，当然最好了。好，谢谢。
好，你这个问题包含了好几个方面。首先呢，关于这个中国体育代表团，他在这个兴奋剂问题上的立场，可能中国代表团本身更适合回答。但是我是看到咱们的中国代表团的负责人曾经对这个媒体公开的表示，他们一定是要拿干干净净的金牌，也会是一场非常干干净净的这个冬奥会。那么你说到这个闭幕式呢，这个肯定是很多的悬念要留到闭幕式举行的当天。那我想我知道的呢，就是这个开闭幕式的这个场地转换已经完成了，而且具体是哪天我记不得，他们也要开始这个彩排。另外呢，你就说到这个就是现在因为这个，特别是比如说在我们这个主发布厅，记者们都在关心兴奋剂的问题。那么我们这个冬奥组委对这个问题会不会有一些担忧？在兴奋剂问题上的立场，我刚才已经阐明了我们的一个原则的立场。那么对这个影响呢，说实在的，我觉得，对我们作为主办方来说，赛程已经过半。那么我们看到的是冬奥会它的这种精彩，它给所有的人们带来了这个欢乐，我想那个大家都能感受得到。对我们来说呢，我看到的是这个就是北京冬奥会是这个运动员参与最多的一届冬奥会，有这个超过90个国家和地区的运动员来到了北京冬奥会，而且他们在这里都创造了非常好的成绩，不断的有奥运会的记录和世界纪录被打破。同时呢，我们也看到这个就是本届奥运会也是这个非常最受关注的一届冬奥会，开幕仅仅4天，这个收视率就已经成为了这个收视率最高的一届冬奥会。它也充分的说明了这个就是冰雪运动爱好者还有全球的观众对我们的冬奥会都非常的这个关注。当然了，我们也看到这个有超过90个这个各国的外国政要来出席我们的这个冬奥会，所以就是赛程过半吧。我看到的冬奥会是这样的一个总体的一个形式和这个一个总体的印象。谢谢。
Okay, let's take 2 more questions. Gentleman here, and then we'll go to Michael Pavitt from Inside the Games. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Angus Watson here from CNN. Mr. Oswald, earlier you said that you didn't have the impression that this Valieva case was linked to state-sponsored doping on behalf of Russia. What gives you that impression specifically?
As I said, it's an impression. We have no details about the case, and therefore, as I said, it's difficult.
Sorry, it's not an interview, so can you just let him answer first? Thank you.
As I said, we don't have details of the case, and therefore, I said it's an impression really from what I read, and I don't know much more than you about the case. And again, it's an impression because the state doping was a big system, and it doesn't seem to be such a situation here. But we'll see when all inquiries are made what is behind it. But for the time being, we cannot say more. I cannot say more.
You've had significant experience, though, in these sorts of cases. What will investigators be looking at to perhaps find a smoking gun that links Valieva with Russian state-sponsored doping?
Well, first of all, the system was a big system with including quite a number of athletes who were selected before. I'm not going to recall all the details of the Russian cases at that time, but it was again involving the state, involving a lot of different organizations and a large number of athletes, which doesn't seem to be the case here. And it's why I get this impression, but I'm cautious saying it's an impression.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Yeah, final question as it's coming up to 20 past. Probably overdone it a little bit. Michael.
Michael Pavitt from Inside the Games. Questions for Denny, please. Just going back to Pyeongchang, there was a lot of finger pointing about where the situation was. We need to reform WADA, we need to reform CAS. Do you think enough was done to reform the issues that you felt were broken? Because at the IOC session at the start of this Games, there was discussion of having weathered the storm. And second question, who is having the finger pointed at them this time for what's gone wrong?
Well, in Pyeongchang, of course, we were disappointed by the fact that our sanctions in a number of cases had been overturned by the Court of Arbitration. And as a lawyer, when you lose a case, you are always disappointed, and maybe sometimes criticisms are made just because you are disappointed. The court had made its job, and again, we can be disappointed, but we cannot change it as such. It's an independent court, and therefore that's what I can say about the Pyeongchang. The changes, I mean, the Court of Arbitration has reviewed its regulation. They do it regularly, as any court should do, or any state should do, to try to correct a few things. But they work independently from the IOC. They don't have to get instructions from the IOC. They see the cases, they analyze what they are doing, and take the necessary measure when necessary.
Thank you very much, everybody. I hope that we brought some clarity, a little bit of clarity from our side to you there with the panel today, and thank you to the panel for joining us. See you all again tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thank you.